Your thoughts, your questions on this. Jim lays out in excruciating detail in these books, whether it's scriptural interpretation, whether it's the social commentary of the times, that in the context of people's understanding of evil and bad things happening, over time it was personified into a Satan, a great spiritual counterweight to God. He says there's no evidence that Satan exists. 1-877-332-8255. Lloyd, you're on with Jim Brayshaw.
Hi, guys. I just really wanted to commend Jim on his work in that, and like sort of teaching an alternative that you can believe in God, but you don't have to accept all the stuff that comes with the church. You know, it's not either you go to church or you're an atheist or you're something else if you're a person who grew up in a Christian home. But there is a belief available and a search for truth that involves God existing, but you don't have to then accept all the stuff that the church is preaching. And I've gone through this journey myself, and I got a couple, I got a simple question for people who turn off their ears when they hear this and say this guy's ridiculous, is that, like, I've heard pastors preach over and over that, I heard a pastor recently preaching on how people twist the words of the Bible, but then he himself over and over said how Satan approached Eve in the garden. But those words weren't used, and to assume that Satan approached Eve in the form of a snake is so ridiculous, because I figure, why would the writer of that story write a story that no one can connect to? Like, can anyone relate to a talking snake? And then we write off Eve and say she was such an idiot for listening. But what if instead it was her inner desire for evil that she was listening to? Now everybody can relate, and so the story makes sense.
Very interesting. Lloyd, can you hang on for a sec?
Yeah.
And you know what we're going to do? Gary's going to get your number off the air, Lloyd, and we'll give you a copy. You were the first caller in of Jim's new book.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, hang on, man. We'll get the details. Okay, so when Lloyd lays out that scenario,
yes,
how do you respond?
Well, the serpent, as he said, is likely the inner inclination Eve had. And when the writer, let's call it Moses, and let's not argue about who wrote the Bible right now, but let's say Moses wrote that story about the serpent. The people he wrote to knew what a serpent motif was, what it represented. It represented the cunning and stealthiness of our own self-justification, our desire to choose that which is not the best for us over that which might be the best for us. And then our justification process takes over inside us. In the self-talk, in fact, it's almost metaphorical, this story. And Moses would have written it in a parable, much like Jesus, the Messiah, wrote in parables or spoke in parables. And the story can come across from the perspective that Eve had this talk inside herself saying, oh, I should try this. Look at it. It looks so good. Oh, no, but I shouldn't, because God says, oh, no, but he won't kill me. Okay, I'm going to try it. And she justified. And that's the serpent. And studying ancient Egypt serpent motif, we see that's exactly how it plays out.
So much, and I guess the modern day bottom line of the parable is the forbidden fruit. So
exactly.
In many respects, that's what the Christian takes away anyway.
It is what they take away anyway, but we like to really find literal aspects in the Bible that prove that God is real. And people say, it's got to be a literal serpent that was talking, and that helps prove God is real, because these things can happen in God's world. And you know what? I'm not taking anything away from Christianity with taking Satan away. I believe I'm adding to that faith to say, okay, you know what, you have one God now. You don't have to worry about this second ancillary being who can possibly thwart the plans of the Creator, and have the freedom that goes with knowing I don't have to deal with some evil entity. I've got a relationship with this Creator, whoever he is, and it's me and him, nothing else.
Why do you do this?
That's an excellent question.
Because I sense here sometimes, I mean, you're very compelling, you've worked hard at this, but I get the feeling even within the Christian faith community, you're kind of pulling uphill sometimes.
Yeah, why do I do this, John? I believe I was looking for an answer that I wasn't getting. And, I mean, we can study personality profiling and decide who likes to question things and who doesn't. But I just happen to be the kind of guy that liked to question things and not stop there with questions, but find the answers. And I started to come across more and more people that were similar in that vein of personality, and they want answers. And it's really, I've done the heavy lifting on this in so many ways, and come up with the answers that really make sense. When people read this, they say, I don't know how I believed in Satan before.
So the most compelling evidence you've found to dispel Satan, where is it?
Well, because I'm leading into the New Testament with this, I'm going to say one of the most compelling evidences is the words of Christ when he says, evil comes from within, from the heart. Nothing from outside can defile a man. All the sins, adultery, lasciviousness, wickedness, sorceries, all come from within. And then, later, he calls Peter Satan. And this piece of evidence is very compelling because he defines what is Satan. He says, for you're not for the things of God, you're for the things of man, to Peter. But if we look at that word Satan, in Greek it's Satanas, and it's simply connected to the Hebrew word meaning adversary. So he was saying, Peter, you're being an adversary to me because you're for the things of man. And he defined what a Satan was right in the New Testament.
Now, scholars, what did they tell you in opposition?
Scholars will say, well, Satan does exist, but he's just God's kind of his court jester or his prosecuting attorney in heaven. And other scholars would say, yeah, there's lots of evidence, so he'd say he does not exist. For sure in the Old Testament, you can't pin down a Satan doctrine. And I deal with how did we get from there, the Old Testament, to here, the Christian New Testament, to believe there is a Satan. That's what goes on in Imagine There's No Satan. And the scholars, they put some good questions to me.
Jim Brayshaw is here. Last word to listener Lee. Lee, you're on with Jim.
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate you for writing that book. Just one observation, like I don't go to church, except weddings and funerals. I've always wondered who wrote the Bible, but one thing I've always thought, the reason there's a Satan is because it helps the church get a lot of their buildings built, Give it to the church, build this new church.
Okay.
Well,
response?
Well, I have given money to churches in the past, fearing that Satan might do something with my money if I don't give it to the church. So I'm past that now. Thanks for that.
Jim Brayshaw, you are doing a signing and reading tonight, McNally Robinson, Saskatoon, 7:30.
Yes.
And you're doing a Halloween lecture. When's that? That's on Halloween night.
Sunday afternoon, 1:30 to 3:30. It's Where Do the Dead Go? Don't Ask Them. They're Sleeping. And it's at St. Mark's Hall on 8th Avenue, 1406.
Wow. Where do the dead go? Don't ask them. They're sleeping. New book out, Imagine There's No Satan. Good job on this. And I guess installments 3 and 4 coming out for the next couple of years.
Hopefully over the next 2 years I'll have those out.
Take care. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, John.
Jim Brayshaw. I'm John Gormley. This is News Talk Radio.